Hey everyone, welcome. While we're waiting people to enter into the webinar, please use the chat feature right now to tell us where you're calling in from. We'd love to know what part of the world you're in. It's always exciting. Ooh, Flagstaff, Arizona, I saw that coming through. That's awesome. Hood River, Oregon, Long Island. This is great. Thank you everyone for joining us. Just a couple more seconds and we'll start this. Ooh, Philadelphia, that's where I'm at. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we should get going. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Jeff Schreifels, principal and owner at Veritas Group, and I'm really excited to be with you today. But before we get started with the conversation, there are a few other items you should know about our webinar system. Your questions are incredibly important today, and we'll have some dedicated time for that. But you're welcome to submit your questions throughout this conversation, and please type those in the Q&A box. Really important so that we can keep track of the questions versus chat. So don't put them in chat, put them in the Q&A box. There is this option to submit your questions anonymously, which you're welcome to use. And we encourage you to use the chat for conversation and connection because our goal is to have this be a space for a community. We're building community here. And as part of that, we're asking each of you to commit to making this a safe space where questions are welcome and where we are all working together to grow as leaders. And so thank you for participating in this manner. Lastly, we'll be sending everyone a link to a recording, to this recording. So be on the lookout for that in an email with a link. All right. Now I'm thrilled to welcome my special guest, Rachel Wyley, who's the CEO and founder at Culture Kinesis. Rachel, thank you for being here and tell us all about you and Culture Kinesis.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be here with Veritas Group. There's so many things I could say about myself and about Culture Kinesis. I will not give you all the details. I'll give you just a taste, and then perhaps we can talk about it another time. I think most important for you all, for this group, this community to know about me and my work is that, as Jeff said, I'm the founder of Culture Kinesis. And our work is to help organizations move beyond traditional DEI frameworks into what we call cultural reimagination. That looks like harnessing innate creativity, leveraging ancestral wisdom to transform workplace cultures, because we believe that every workplace can be a catalyst for societal evolution. And so we do that again by leveraging creativity and getting to the place where we can really be in our collective humanity. Essentially, what that looks like is folks say, Rachel, I have a culture problem. They tell me all about it. I ask them a ton of questions. And then I say, okay, I think this is the root of it. Let's start here. And then we begin a journey from that place.
Awesome. I know firsthand how amazing you are because you worked with me to really kind of help me figure out where I'm going to go in the future. And it was amazing to go through that process with you.
Thank you so much. It was a
Yeah.
joy to be in it with you, Jeff.
Yeah. All right. So today's call is going to be a little different than our usual webinars. We're going to have limited slides, and instead, we're going to be chatting about leadership and some of the challenges leaders are facing right now and how we can address those, and some strategies that will support you as a leader in this time and this environment. So, to start us off, Rachel, let's talk about how everything starts with you as a leader and why it's important for you to understand that role, especially in turbulent times.
Yes. Jeff, I want to double click on what you said about everything beginning with you as a leader. And I think we understand that, but to really sit in it is a very different thing. To understand that means that your role as a leader is pivotal. It's integral to how things happen, especially related to culture in your team. But it also requires, I think, a self-centeredness that can be uncomfortable for us as leaders
Mm,
sometimes. We're not often taught to focus on ourselves. And what I hold and what I coach folks around, Jeff, you know this directly, is that in order for us to be able to lead through any type of time, but in particular turbulent times, to your point, we have to be able to lead from our best selves. And that requires us making space for introspection. It requires that we know our leadership selves intimately, both the positive, beautiful things and the challenging things. And from
yeah,
that place of knowing, we can then hold space for our teams in a different way.
yeah. So tell us, like, how can we give ourselves permission
Mhm.
to resist what
Mhm.
is trying to move us away from what
Yeah.
we need to be focusing on or who we are as a leader?
Yes, I love this question for many reasons. And I choose to focus on that word resist. It's a very powerful word, it's a very specific word. And we talk about resistance, I think often, our examples through history or just our understanding of the connotation of the word resist
Yeah.
sounds like something that's forceful. That sounds like something that is tedious, perhaps. And what I would love to invite this community into is that resistance, especially in turbulent times, often looks like slowing down. It often
Mm,
looks like getting very quiet and really being grounded in a couple things. What are your values, right? As an organization, not just on paper, not just on your website, but like what does it look like to embody these values? So if you have a value of centering community, right? What does that actually look like? And examining, are we living
mhm.
that? Are we existing in that in the way we intend to? Thinking about legacy, Jeff, you and I talked about this extensively.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be grounded and what is the legacy you're trying to leave? Because as a leader, that requires you to be in the future, right? To be thinking about not just what's happening here, respond to what's happening in this moment, but make sure that your dream self, right? Your the visionary self is really grounded in the future. And the last thing I would offer is when we think about resistance, Adrienne Marie Brown, who many of you may know and study, has this concept that she forwards: small is all. And so, not
Mm,
always focusing on what's the massive resistance that we can do. People have that covered. That is important. Some of your
mhm.
organizations have that covered. But as an individual leader, what is the act of small resistance that can happen every day that simply challenges the overtaking of this cultural moment? Small resistance matters tremendously.
I really like that. I think as leaders, especially nonprofit leaders,
Mhm.
so many things are coming at them.
Yes.
And it's easy to lose our focus because we're always kind of going to what's urgent.
Yes.
And it takes us away from thinking long term. It takes us away from being in the present moment.
Yes.
Um, and I like your idea of that, thinking of resistance as quiet,
Mhm.
having that time to kind of refocus and recenter yourself.
Yes.
And I know from my own experience that that works, right? It does.
Yes.
But it is interesting. Like the word resist
Mhm.
does have this connotation that you're doing something active to push against all this stuff that's happening to us. No, no, I can't talk to you right now. But it's allowing yourself the time. And how do you do that? So are you doing that on a daily basis? How do you create that quiet?
Mhm. I'm gonna be so honest with you, Jeff. I'm a highly type B person. So the type A folks might be a little stressed by my answer. Um,
Okay.
but however, I'm an artist, right? And so part of what that looks like for me is that I have to make sure that I'm reminded that there are things larger than what's happening on my computer screen. So literally
Mm.
up 10 minutes before you and I got on, I was outside walking and just in open air, right? Trying to remember,
Yeah.
yes, there's a lot more available here, right? It's not just what's happening in my email inbox. And the second thing I would offer is this moment for me is about study. So I spend a lot of time, in particular with Black artists, Black activists and their
Mhm.
writings.
Mhm.
And I think about the things that they teach us, and I think about the reality that this moment, we talk about it a lot as though it's unprecedented. It's not unprecedented. This is a historical moment that has roots in the past. And
Yeah.
so part of my resistance is to be a student and to
Hmm.
understand, well, how did we get to this place?
Yeah.
And then move from that place of knowing, which is also resistance. If we move too quickly without the knowledge, we're not
Mm,
actually grounded in the way that we ought to be.
I like that. Well, how do you feel as we as leaders, how can we as leaders really fight to maintain that creative part,
Yeah,
our openness, and our compassion when we are under all this extreme pressure and stress all the time?
totally. Yeah. It is a fight, but I think it becomes less of a fight as it becomes a practice, right?
Okay.
That's easy for me to say because I no longer work as a nonprofit executive. So I don't mean to disrespect the reality that that may not be available to folks in this community right away. It may
Hmm.
have to start very small and they may inch into it, and that's also okay. I want this whole community to hear me say that that's okay. It's a practice, it takes time. I
Hmm.
think what I want you all to, this community to really hold to is that your creativity, the creative part of your work is probably not at your desk. And that's hard because your email
Mm.
inbox continues to fill up, things continue to feel urgent. It's probably not at your desk. It's probably outside. It's probably on a walk. It's probably in a book. You know, it's probably not in your email inbox.
Yeah.
And I think that what really honoring that it's not in your inbox allows you to do is to think about number one, well, who is my creative self? If you don't know who that self is, you can't locate it when you need it, right? So
Hmm.
there has to actually be an investment in, well, who is that? So for me, yes, I'm a singer, I'm a poet, I write essays, all these things, but my creative self is very activist minded, and it's grounded in study and understanding that community is everything. And so my work centers around that. When I need
Hmm.
to do that in my work, I have to call in that self. I have to bring myself to that place and work and ideate from that place. And what that allows for very quickly is that it allows for you as a leader to be able to imagine possibility, right?
Mm.
Present is not necessarily a place of possibility in nonprofit work. We have to be moving. That's what your team is for. Right? You make sure your team is strong, they know what to do, they can fire on all cylinders. That means that you
Yeah.
as a leader are able to be simultaneously in the present and in the future. And the future is where we do the possibility and the reimagining work.
Yeah. I love that so much. Okay, you're going to do an activity for all of us,
Uh-huh.
with us.
Mhm.
So let's get into that because I think it's going to be fun.
I hope so, Jeff. I think it will be too. Community, Jeff knows this about me. I'm somebody who, as I mentioned to you, I really want to invite folks into creativity, into their artist self, because I know how valuable it is for reimagining futures. When we talk about the moment that we're in, there's a lot of things we can name about what's happening with this administration, what's happening just globally around the culture of
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, toxic capitalism, right? We're all dealing with money and talking about money all the time. There are ways in which the ways that we live and we be together do not jive with the values that I know many of your organizations hold and
Mhm.
uphold. And so, what is required, bridging to where we just came from, the question that Jeff just asked me, how do we make sure that we maintain a creative self so that we can stay in this place of possibility of reimagining? It's worth saying in this moment the powers that be in this particular era are highly uncreative in my opinion, right? All they have to do is go
Mhm.
back to playworks, to playbooks of oppression, to playbooks of inequity, right? And pull forward what happened in the past. That's not a creative process, right? That's a brilliant process. It's a process of study, right? Knowing history and pulling it forward.
Mhm.
It is not a creative process. And so part of the way we combat that is we insist that our organizations on being creative, on being in the realm of imagination, reimagination, possibility. And so the activity that I want to just introduce you all to today is something that I call container building. Let me pull it up so that you have this visual. Jeff, how is that looking on your end so I can
That
make
looks great.
sure? Amazing.
Yeah.
So there's three key questions here, but I don't want you to focus on the questions right away. We'll get to that in a moment. What I want you to focus on is that this is a regular, ordinary, mason jar that we often use in our homes or we see in various places. And what's most important about this is that this space, it is a figurative space where you can hold your creative self and you can say, So in the scheme of things, right, we are always in some type of container. This larger, I often talk about it as this larger toxic capitalist container in a lot of ways, tells us that we must move in a particular way, right? We must move at a particular pace. We must make sure that these things get done, and we must, in a lot of ways, forget our humanity to be able to participate in all the things that are moving at rapid pace. And what I'd like to invite you into is an idea that perhaps, yes, we do have to operate in that world. We can't just extricate ourselves from it, right? It's not going to work. You can try to, but at the end of the day, there is a way that this sector operates. What we do have available to us, though, is we can say, well, in moments when I need to really engage with my creativity, with possibility, I can go into my container of my design and I can ideate from that place, right? So, if, for example, I might say, we really need to figure out in this moment, even though our funding is very limited, even though we have high staff turnover, perhaps, right? This moment is tough. How can we move into the container that we've built where we know our creativity lives so we can tap into different thoughts, different ways of being? Let me pause and let that just sit for a second. I don't want to move too quickly, and then I'll move to these questions. And actually, community, while you're holding that, I'm going to switch the slide. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you to tell me if it actually switched or if I need to do
Yep.
something. Okay, perfect. Now, community, I just asked you a question. Jeff knows this. I'm all about questions. I'll ask you 8 million questions, and there's always a reason why. These are questions that you can take with you, so please don't feel stressed at seeing 5 questions. What I'd like for you to do, I'm going to read all of them to you. Just choose one. Choose the one that asks you to take it home with you. Choose the one that speaks to you most. Let the rest go so it doesn't become overwhelming. In this era where there are all these things happening, where we do feel the need to resist, where we do feel that there are things that we need to be doing perhaps differently or urgently to be able to resist the challenges that exist in this cultural ether. Here's what I want you to ask yourself, and this is going to relate to how you build your container in just a moment. What parts of your organizational vision are being tested right now? Because I know many are, right? You built visions in a perhaps in a different era, and now this era is requiring you perhaps to move differently or to think about things differently. What's being tested, but also on the flip side, what is becoming very, very clear? So part of your vision may be something like, we are here to change the way, for example, healthcare happens in this country long term. Beautiful. You may be doubling down on that because of the things that you're seeing happen again within this socio-political moment, but also those same things that have become clear might be being tested in a very particular way. You don't have to have the answer, you just have to be clear about it, right? What's being tested, what's becoming really clear. Second question, and again, just take the one that speaks to you most directly. Where are you moving quickly instead of moving with intention? Now, Jeff knows this. I'm a former nonprofit executive director. I know what it's like when you ain't got time. Like you just have to get things done. Things are moving always. To take a breath feels like an insurmountable task, right? It feels like it's not available to you. And yet I still am going to ask you, where are you moving too quickly instead of moving with intention? Because intention is how you actually work to solve the problems that your organization is intending to solve. Again, answer, not solution time, just knowing.
Mhm.
Third question. What becomes possible when you step away from what's expected? Again, the resistance, right? When you step away from what's expected of you traditionally, when you choose creativity over conformity in your leadership, when you choose reimagination over replication, what's available to you? What becomes possible? Again, I'm not telling you to sign in blood that you're going to do it. I'm just asking you to think about what is available to you, what is possible if you do that, if you try that on. Last 2 questions. What wisdom, what knowledge have you acquired over time that you may be trading in for legitimacy at this moment, right? What is actually something that you know that you feel like you have to play differently because, again, what the socio-political ether is requiring of you? Are there creative practices that you've abandoned to appear professional, and what would it mean to bring those things back, right? An example of this very quickly is, as I mentioned to you all, I'm an artist. I bring creativity to everything that I do, but I had to learn to give myself permission to do that. It's not an easy thing to do. It changed once I was able to, though. It changed the way I had conversations. It changed the way I structured my team, my board, etc. What's available to you if you can bring even just a little bit of creativity back into how you lead? And then lastly, perhaps the most important question, we do work for and on behalf of and with community. Community is the best example of what it looks like to sometimes be subversive, to resist, etc., both in this moment and also historically. Who in your community is already doing the work of surviving and thriving in what I call the margin, right? Away from the center, away from the traditional way of being? Who is an example for what it looks like to be in that place of possibility, to be in that place of reimagination? What can they teach your organization? What do we need to learn from them? Let me pause. Again, please don't be overwhelmed by the amount of questions. It's a menu for you. Take the one that speaks most closely to you and take that one with you. Pause, sit with that. And then lastly, we'll go back to container and apply that very quickly. I know that we have Q&A and other things planned, and so this is just a taste, but hopefully it's something that you can hold to and bring back to your work pretty immediately once we get through talking about the container application. But for now, just let it sit for a moment. Community, as we get ready to shift into the container exercise, and I'm just going to give you a brief explanation for this. Before I move slides, I want you to be clear about what your question is that you're taking into this last part of the activity. Which of these 5 questions speaks most to you that you want to take with you? And for the purposes of example, I'm going to take this second question, where are you moving fast instead of moving with intention, for our example here. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you one more time just to make sure we got where we're supposed to be. Okay.
Yep, we're
Perfect.
good.
So community, if we take this question, where are you moving fast instead of moving with intention? And we think about, well, who is my creative self? What does my creative self need? What types of things could exist within this container? Again, it's removed from the center. It's a space where you can ideate, where you can be in possibility, where you can reimagine. We move away from the center onto the margin within our own container of our own design. If our goal is to really think about how we move with more intention and less speed where the moment requires it, what types of things would we want to put inside of our container? What types of things support us to move with more intention and less speed? I'd love to have you throw some things in the chat if you have ideas. If you're just thinking,
Yeah.
if you're in your own space, I love it, do it, but let us know what you think. What types of things can I place in my own container of my design that protects my creativity and allows me to move with intention versus prescribed speed? What I might say, community, is I am a follower of James Baldwin. He's one of my favorites. And so I actually, in my container, would put his name as a reminder that he always taught us that speed is not what we think it is, right? In the arc of history, moving slowly, being a student, taking in things and assessing things with intention actually allows you to create the world that you seek. So I would put his name in my container as a reminder. What I would keep outside of my container, I feel like for me, and I won't go into a whole story about this, Jeff, I promise you, but
It's
in my
okay.
experience as an executive director, in particular as a Black woman, I learned very early that my job, early and erroneously, that my job was to be impressive to donors, right? That's the way in
Mm,
which I can get my job done and I can do it well. And so
mhm,
that meant like, well, let me move at this speed of being as impressive to as many people as possible. And that came at the expense of intention. The intentional part of me would say, well, I will find the people who jive with what it is that this organization does, and we can have authentic and clear and reciprocal conversation if I'm less focused on being impressive. And so what stays out of my container is the desire to be impressive because I know that makes me move quicker than I need to, and that comes at the expense of my intention.
mhm.
Very, very last question, community. What might you allow to permeate your container at intervals because it's not helpful or unhelpful, and it's not necessarily something that needs to permanently stay in versus be kept out at all times? That looks different for everybody. What can come in at times, what can't come in at times. So something I might say is, as someone who is very type B, I'll be so honest with you all, deadlines, I have an interesting relationship with deadlines. I'm getting better, but it is an interesting relationship. I might say, okay, yes, deadlines, because I know I need to be focused on what my team needs, right? We're still in the present. There's still stuff that has to happen. But what I might also push on with myself and my team is to say, well, in my container, I want to always ask myself, is this deadline in service of creativity? Does it allow enough openness? Does it allow enough compassion for myself and my team for us to get to a place we are actually creating that which we intend to, or are we just simply trying to meet a deadline?
That's good. What about allowing others in your life to help you with that part?
I
That
love it.
way, you know what I mean? Like
Totally. Hmm.
someone that keeps you focused,
Yes.
knows who you are, but knows also, Rachel, you need to get a little, you know what I mean?
100%. I have someone like that in my life, Jeff. You'll be happy to know. I have a member of my team who is very
Yeah.
into me, and he knows that I need to be in my creative mind, but he's also like, and Rachel, this do need to get done by Friday. So I'm letting you know 2 weeks in advance. I do need this done. This
Yeah.
thing is flexible. I love that idea.
Hmm.
Hmm. Community, I hope that this is landing. I hope that this feels like something that you can use as you go throughout your day, weeks, months, year. Um, and I think what I might offer as a practice for this, just try this on when you think about it, right? Take this with you into your meeting or start your week from this place and just think about, based on what needs to happen this week, based on my intention to move with intention, my intention to be deliberate, my intention to be creative, how can I make sure that I am going through a process of thinking about what needs to be in this container so it can hold me in a way that allows me to be my best self as a leader?
Mm,
And that's my offering to you all.
that's awesome. Patricia had some really cool things, and so did
Mm.
Rita. In her lid, affirmative data. Patricia says exists within foundational excellence, alignment with personal values,
Mm.
perfectionist tendencies in her lid, and to
Yes.
permeate input from others and constructive criticism.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Love
was
you.
really good.
Hmm.
Thanks, Patricia, for being so honest. That's amazing.
Absolutely. This is beautiful. And it's truly just this simple. And it's important to say, too, this is not a fixed container, right? Change this as you need to, week to
Yeah.
week, day to day. Oh, I need this. I don't actually need this. I need to change this wording. Let it be what you need it to be. It's for you. Um, last thought I will offer you all is I think about this as a pot of tea, right? When you put water into a kettle, it does nothing unless there's something moving, right? That kettle, that container is meant to change the properties of the water. This container is meant to alter you, but alter you into your more creative self, alter you into a self that can meet the moment. The moment requires openness, Jeff, to your point, compassion, creativity.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that you're in a container that's going to positively alter you so that you can meet that moment?
Rachel, do you have a story of how you help someone through this kind of
Mm.
thing
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
what that did for them? I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm so happy to share that. So this is something that I use with every single one of my clients, and all of them. When we collect feedback, when we talk with folks after, my team talks with folks after, they always come back to this as something
Mm.
that's helpful to them. And what it does, and an example I can give you is I have a client who is an activist and who is regularly very tired. And it's like,
Mm.
Rachel, I have all these things I got to do. There's urgency around this moment, right? I need to be outside organizing. I need to be doing all these things. I just don't have time to be intentional. And I tell her all the time, I see you, I hear you. And you starting your days this way allows for you not necessarily to be less stressed, not necessarily to have fewer things to do, but it reminds you why you do it and who you need to be to do the work effectively. And so she reminds me all the time that when she takes the time to sit in her container, even if just for 5 minutes, for 3 minutes, she's reminded, oh, the indoctrination of move quickly, do this at this pace, I'm interrupting that. And I realize, even when I'm not successful at resisting the indoctrination, right? I'm remembering that there's something else available to me and it doesn't come up as much, right? Those old patterns don't surface
Yeah.
as much. I remember I can be different and I actually do my best work from this place.
There's one question. I thought that was really good. There's one question that came in from Linda,
Hmm.
who was basically saying, how do I stop feeling guilty for not, she said at her desk, but it's more about doing stuff, constantly moving and thinking you're getting, not stopping.
Hmm.
How do
Hmm.
you not feel guilty about that?
Yep. Yep.
What's the
It's a
process
powerful,
there?
yeah, it's a powerful question, Linda. And I won't lie to you, because we are now in relationship. Right? So I won't tell you lies. But what I will tell you is that it took me time to learn this, right? It was not an overnight process. And so first and foremost, I had to give myself permission to grow. And that's something that you should probably put in your container. Patience with the process of growth and permission to grow and develop. Guilt comes from a very particular place, and guilt as an emotion, we might call it, is can be highly disempowering. We know that we experience that. And so again, I think your container is really meant to empower you to be somewhere else, to be in a different emotion, to be in a different experience. I think that when the guilt shows up, what I would ask you to do is examine, where did you learn that you should feel guilty about XYZ? Who taught you
Mhm.
that? You learned it somewhere. It was given to you somewhere. It wasn't naturally occurring. And sometimes when we can get to the root of how something came to be, then we can dislodge it more easily, right? So when I put myself, we don't have the same experience, of course, but when I put myself in my former executive director self, that seat, I always felt guilty that I wasn't doing enough for my team, that I wasn't doing enough for community, that I wasn't bringing in enough money, that if I didn't bring in enough money, we're going to be in trouble. All these things are going to happen. And these are very real concerns, right? And
Mhm.
I also know that because guilt can be disempowering, it actually impedes us from getting to that creative self. And that creative self could actually help us resolve, right, the source or the root of whatever is causing the guilt. I think that when the guilt shows up, let it be there, acknowledge it because it has something to tell you. And instead of resisting it and instead of trying to dislodge it prematurely, I would say ask questions of it, right? Understand, why is it here? What is it trying to tell me? How do I move it? Because I understand the essence of it. And I think, Linda, 9 times out of 10, what you will find is that that is your indoctrination telling you that you should feel guilty about something that you really shouldn't, from a human place. As a human being, you got to sleep, you got to eat, you can only do so much. And I
Yeah.
would also say very, very quickly, Jeff, part of what guilt causes us to forget is that we operate within an ecosystem. In
Mm.
our work, we do one part. It is not our job to fix all the parts of it. That's not available. That's not real. And so I think first dislodging the idea that you are responsible for everything. What is your part? Make sure you do your part excellently, creatively, with compassion, openness. But what is your part? And then let it rest. Someone else will pick that part up.
That is hard,
So hard.
but very true.
So hard.
Um, yeah, I've wrestled with that my whole career,
Totally. Hmm.
because we do it the best. And so it feels like we always have to, we're the ones that are going to have to get it done.
Totally. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Can I add something to that, Jeff?
yeah.
The way you said that sat in my mind in a very particular way. We've had so many conversations about this, you and I. Part of our indoctrination culturally in this country is rugged individualism, right? We get it done. We
Yeah.
have to be the one. I suffer from this constantly. We have to be the one. If I don't get it done, nobody's going to get it done. That sits opposite community, completely opposite community. Community requires interdependence. Community requires, as you said earlier, Jeff, to ask for help, ask for accountability. We have to be able to see those things when they come up, not blame ourselves because it's intentional indoctrination. It keeps us tired. It keeps us from resisting the system, right? We ain't got time to resist because we are tired, right? We're trying to keep pace.
Yeah.
If we release some of that, then we can start to see, well, I shouldn't blame myself for this. But what does that individualistic thinking come at the expense of? It comes at the expense of building community. And so every time you
Hmm.
resist that, it's not just resisting so you can feel better, it's being in a
Hmm.
different practice of community building. That is actually how we get to those possibilities again. That's actually how we reimagine culture.
Something that just struck me as you said that too is about having to do hard things.
Mhm.
Like sometimes we have to let people go.
Yes.
Sometimes as leaders, we have to have difficult conversations with people and how they're doing their jobs.
Hmm.
And I know from just my initial thing, whenever I have to have this hard conversation, I don't want to do it.
Hmm.
That's the initial thing. But I do know from the history of having to manage people and having to fire people and have hard conversations
Hmm. Hmm.
that having those conversations are really important. And um, we have to allow ourselves as leaders to go into the hard stuff as well,
Hmm.
but to do it from a place where you do take that time to make sure it's not some kind of reaction,
Yes.
but it's something that's uh, that you see the importance of, that you're doing it in a manner of uh, generosity,
Yes.
grace, all
Yes.
those kind of.
Hmm.
But how sometimes we can feel like, oh, there's conflict and I don't want to get involved in it. It's our initial. So many of us are like that.
Trying to unmute myself. Yes. And for good reason, right?
Mhm.
Again, we forget the things that we are taught. We forget the ways in which we have been indoctrinated into a culture and what
Mhm.
those teachings serve, who they serve. Um, the examples that you just gave, generosity, grace, compassion, we put those things in our container, right? And so when you get prepared to have a difficult conversation, you get prepared
Mm.
to do something that is going to challenge you in a very particular way, remembering, well, I have a space I can go to get equipped, right? And I
Yeah.
know what I need best. I might ask other people, right? That can be valuable too. But most times I know what I need best if I allow myself just to think about it for a little bit. If I know that I need to ground in grace to do my work because I have difficult conversations happening or because I have to navigate these things that are very hard, we take 3 minutes to just get grounded and like, well, this is my space where I can activate a different self. Even just that small reminder reminds us, like, oh, something else is available to me, right? Something
Yeah.
else is available here
Yeah.
that may not be available if I don't remind myself. It's simply a reminder about what's available and it's a reminder of who you are. Last statement is to this end is I think we severely underestimate, Jeff, the way in which these, again, sociopolitical ether, the larger culture, asks us to abandon ourselves to get things done, right? To
Mm.
separate ourselves from
Yeah.
ourselves to get things done. And so part of what this allows you to do is to reintegrate and remember, well, who am I actually? Yeah, I'm an
Yeah.
executive director. Yes, I'm a leader in this regard, but I'm also Rachel Wyley, right? And I bring these things, and that should also be part of my leadership. We severely underestimate when we get up and we go directly to our email inbox, we have forgotten who we are. We didn't take 3 minutes to remember, who am I? How do I lead? Who am I? Let me
Yeah.
ground here and do the
Yeah.
work from that place.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We got a great question that came in from Rosalind.
Hmm.
This is her question. Thinking about strategic planning,
Hmm.
how can we help establish comfort with change and a sense of safety within change for our organizations so that we can make the intentional progress at the root of our mission?
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at your face. This is a beautiful and a deep question, right? And we could have a whole, I mean, series about how one
Yeah,
approaches this. So I'm just going to answer from my heart and what my heart is asking to say.
yeah.
First. Um, Change is inevitable. Change is something that has always happened. And so part of why culture kinesis focuses on ancestral wisdom in addition to creativity is because I think when we don't use our container, right, when we don't have a container like I have that says, well, what would James Baldwin say? What would Bell Hooks say about this? We forget that, oh, the ideas that I have on October 21st, 2025 are not all that is available, right? There is much more available to us. And
Hmm.
so I think here comes again this idea of study. How can we think about when has this happened before? In history, in our experiences, and bring those lessons forward as it relates to change. If change is always happening, then we have to examine why it's difficult for us, right? Something we've been taught maybe suggests that it shouldn't be difficult for us or that we should think about it as something that is negative. And that's not necessarily true. But what I do think it illuminates is that the structure that we operate in is not built for change necessarily. And so we're constantly bumping up against this thing. To answer your question very directly, my friend, I think that we have to take very seriously that we have to prime ourselves and our teams for any type of change. And priming
Yeah.
work doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to take up a whole lot of time, but it does have to be sustained. And
Hmm.
so I think what I would ask you to think about is, again, that concept, Adrienne Marie Brown, small is all. What routines can we establish that remind us that change is always happening? How can we as a team practice what it looks like to become more and more comfortable with change? How can we be in conversation about change in a sustained way so that it is not interruptive every time we have a key moment of change, right? It's about, I think, more than anything about habit and about container. So I would ask you to think about for you, for your team, what could you put in your container that would allow you to be in a continual practice of embracing change? Um, and then ask your team to join you, ask them to contribute to this conversation. What helps them to be able to meet change in a different place, right? A lot of this is simply conversation. And that is the hard part because we don't have time a lot of times to have these
Yeah.
conversations. We got to talk about metrics. We got to talk about money. How can our resistance be? We actually insist on having these conversations because we see into the future. If we don't, every time change happens, it's going to be something that shakes our foundation when it doesn't
Yeah.
have to if we allow it to be sustained.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you have any other questions, please put them in the question Q&A. Um, I feel like if I were, this is the two big things that I'm stepping back from this conversation is that as leaders, we really need to know ourselves.
Yes. Hmm.
Who are we, right?
Hmm.
What do we need to be effective or, be whole people and really be honest with ourselves? Who are we?
Hmm.
What, like as you said, you need an assistant sometimes to help you stay on, so all these things about ourselves, the good and the bad, we need to know that about ourselves
We
to
do.
be effective. And the next one, the other one, last one is the overall feeling is, hey, we need to slow down. You need to take time, because our world is so fast,
Yeah.
especially as leaders, where we have to make decisions all the time, where so many things are coming at us all the time.
Yeah.
And if we could just slow down,
Mhm.
and if we knew ourselves while we were slowing down, we'd have the time to like
Mhm.
understand, okay, this is how I should deal with it.
Totally. Hmm. Yes. I love that summary, Jeff. And it's not, I do, and it's not lost on me. If you are somebody on this call who's like, Rachel, I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't have that time, I see you. I have been that person. And what I offer to you is, again, in the process of changing culture, which is what nonprofit work is in a lot of ways, right? Correcting inequities, et cetera. We actually cannot afford to not take time,
Mm,
right? And as a leader, typically you have the position of power to say so, right? And so if you're not leveraging the position of power to change that, even in small, small ways, again, coming back to the top of this conversation, everything begins with you, right? And so
yeah.
what are you committing to as a small shift, as a small change that allows for there to be more spaciousness for you and for your team so that you can do your actual work, which is reimagining the future, right? We cannot, our vision statements say it, right? We cannot make those things so if we don't have the capacity or time to reimagine, right? It's what we have to do.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank
This has been a
you.
fun conversation.
It's always a joy
I
to be
feel
here.
so much more relaxed right now.
I love to I love to hear you say that. I love that.
So good.
Thank
And
you.
for everyone out there, the rest of the community, if you really want more support and community to support you as a leader, one of the ways that you can do that is head over to our Veritas Community Hub. This free community space is designed to create opportunities for people like you to ask questions, to connect on common topics, and really learn from your peers. And we hope to see you in week's session where we're going to have Birgit Burton, who's the founder of AADO, the African American Development Officers Conference, for an incredible conversation that will leave you inspired and motivated. So, thank you and take care and know yourself and take some time, slow down. All right? Thanks again, Rachel. Really great to see you.
Good to see you too, Jeff. Thank you so much.
See you.